Hey yo, it's Andrew Whipple here with Gamer's Guide to Life, and I want to talk a little bit about the new Epilogue DLC for Mass Effect 3. Alright, so, if you haven't played Mass Effect 3, if you know nothing about the universe, and I'm going to bring up Gears of War here as well, then you probably shouldn't listen to the rest of this. I don't want to ruin the story because it's fantastic, so you've been warned. Anyway, so the DLC just came out, free for everybody, and BioWare really should be commended for doing this. Because a company like BioWare, who has come under fire for doing these very, very controversial endings, didn't even have to do any of this for anybody. But they listened to their fans, and I gotta say that I'm very impressed with each of these new endings. So there's 4 of them that I know of. There might be more, but I think that's just about it. But this DLC added new cutscenes, a ton of new information. They did a fantastic job with it. So I guess to put this in perspective, if you hated the original Mass Effect endings, I think that you still might feel a little empty inside, but it'll clear almost everything up. Every little thing. Now, I won't go into detail about each aspect that was completely changed, but for me, the most important thing that they addressed was the different endings, the varieties. So synthesis, control, destroy, and even refusal, the new one that they put in. They're all fantastic. Synthesis, it felt like they were really trying to push, just because it unifies the whole galaxy, including the Reapers. Everyone's helping each other. There's a new form of DNA. It's kind of weird, but it's a different ending. You don't have to choose it if you don't want to. I thought Control actually turned out to be the best ending. It's very weird. It was spooky, too, because Shepard, he assumes the role of the Catalyst, that boy that you speak to, that represents the Reapers. So he takes that position, and he narrates the entire ending sequence, talking about how now he fully understands the decisions that he's made. He has the Reapers repairing the mass relays. I thought it was very powerful. It was. But I still stuck with my original decision with Destroy, just because I want to see what happens if and when, of course, they do come out with a new Mass Effect game. I thought Destroy was actually the weakest ending, besides Refusal. Obviously, because you lose. But it's cool that Refusal has you reflect on all the decisions and things that you've made. And then Liara's, that little time capsule, you see it just under the ground. Very cool sequence. But Destroy, it's a basic victory, almost like a movie ending, where everyone's talking about how they can rebuild after the fact. It was alright. It was okay. But anyway, I'm really happy that BioWare decided to do this, but at the same time, you're listening to someone who believed in the Indoctrination theory. And I understand how some of you might feel about that whole theory in general. But just take it from my point of view. Experience the end of this game vicariously, through me. When you finally get hit by Harbinger's beam, when you're making your way up to the Citadel, obviously that was where everything shifted. The game itself changed. And if you've played any of the Mass Effect games, or all of them, 1, 2, and 3 itself, you'd know that BioWare has paid immense attention to detail. Mass Effect 3 addressed everything. They did a great job with the dialogue. I think actually the best job in games. The narrative is just second to none. Okay, there's probably better stories out there. I'm sure there are. But I thought they did a fantastic job with just piecing the rest of the universe together and winding the story down. But there was a lot of questions, especially when you get aboard the Citadel and you confront the elusive man, and Anderson's right there, who is seemingly suspended and being controlled by the elusive man himself. And then it happens to you as well. There's these black wisps that cover your screen. It was weird. And I remember going through that final scene and just saying to myself, what the hell is going on? How is none of this is making sense? Where did all of this come from? And then Anderson dies, and then you go up to the top of the Citadel where the catalyst is, and then this dude, it appears. He reveals all this information and says, yeah, so you basically need to make 3 decisions. Go. I sat there for a good 3 to 5 minutes just trying to take everything in to understand what was going on. And I came to the conclusion, without browsing the internet or doing any of that stuff, because I hate guides and I hate people who have to look up what happens next to make the decision. You shouldn't play a game like Mass Effect in that way. It ruins a lot of the experience, especially when it comes to your own choices. So anyway, sitting there, I said, there's no way that I could just take all of this and accept what this dude is saying, because if he's part of the Reapers, I figured, all right, it's the kid that we've been seeing in the nightmares. Maybe it's Harbinger trying to trick me or some sort. So I really thought about it, and then I went with the hued and red destroy option, because I thought maybe he's just trying to trick me, and that's what we're going to do. So I made the decision, saw the endings, was really confused by it, and then I did go online and I checked the rest of the endings out, and to my dismay, found out they're practically all the same initially. So then I got to talking with other people, and then I noticed this whole indoctrination thing came up, because I definitely didn't think it was just indoctrination in general, but it all made sense. There's a video that I linked to in my article that you should definitely check out if you haven't had the chance to. There's so much information and evidence supporting the theory. I really thought that's where they were going with it. I did. And I couldn't understand why everyone was so upset. So I defended them in an article as well, saying that there's no way that BioWare would have just been so great at information and divulging information throughout the game, and then all of a sudden cast it all away just at the end of the game. That didn't make sense to me. And I think that any fan of the series or of BioWare in general would know, okay, you're right, that's a strange factor. Why would they do that? It doesn't make sense. There's something greater at work here. But with the release of this DLC, that proved that I was wrong. And I apologize for it. There's a lot of other people out there, too, that believed in that indoctrination theory and that now feel the exact same way. There's a lot of evidence supporting it, but with the new endings, that's evidence enough to show that we are all wrong about it. But I have a real issue with this. While I can admit that I was wrong, and I can say that the new endings are fantastic by conveying this information, I'm still extremely disappointed, because that shows that BioWare or EA, they pushed the game out too fast. They didn't think about the endings themselves, or either it was rushed or people just didn't see it to greenlight it at the end. I don't know. This is just all speculation. But either way, they failed in that regard, and that really bothers me. Because how can you get to the end of a game like that? The end of a trilogy. It's highly anticipated, and you screw it up like this. I don't understand how somebody could do that. I really don't. And then by putting out this DLC, it shows that, okay, well, we were wrong, and this is basically an apology talking about that. I'm not okay with it. I'm not. And what really bothers me, too, besides all of that, which is a lot, they had themselves set up here for an incredible twist on a story. Incredible. I can't think of anything else that would have blown my mind more than this indoctrination theory. And if you don't know too much about it, again, check out that video. It's incredible. It will open your eyes to what these people were thinking. I feel that they had a chance here to make something great. Something that would almost revolutionize storytelling in a way. I used the example in my article. It reminded me, there hasn't been a greater story like this since the introduction of Half-Life, when it came out on the PC years and years ago. When people saw that opening sequence, they were just shocked. Words couldn't describe what they were feeling because they didn't think it was possible to get something this good and portray it in this way. But that's what happened. And then with this indoctrination theory, very intelligent and well thought out, a great twist, and then it just didn't happen. And I think that's a failure in the narrative and the writers more so. And it reminds me of one thing. It might sound crazy, but Epic Games' failure in Gears of War. A lot of people nowadays, I feel, think that Gears is just all about like these thick dudes, burly men, chainsaws, blood, blah, just running around killing people. That might be, but I'm telling you, from someone who was there on day one when Gears first came out, that's not the truth at all. There was a deeper story involved here, a much deeper one, and they just decided to cast it aside. It actually reminds me a little bit of Halo in that regard, but I won't get too confusing here by spinning games around. The reason why I think that Mass Effect is similar to Gears in the storytelling failure is that in Gears 1, when you went through that game, you had no idea what the Locusts really were, what they were after, their intentions, anything. They couldn't communicate with the Locusts. They took no prisoners. It was just kill all. And that was it. It's a scary thing if you think about it. There's nothing that anybody could do except for just fight back. It was a pretty intriguing story element. For an action game, it absolutely was. But as the games progressed, the story didn't. They just decided to introduce in Gears 2, and then, of course, more so in 3, the Lambent, which ended up being like the Flood. So the third party that everyone was really worried about. God, that was so stupid. It was so dumb. Games Radar put up an article after I had discussed it years ago, too, that if you really wanted the planet to benefit, then you should just leave it to the Locust. The idea here was, in books and such, and in the games, they'd talk about Emulsion and the Pendulum Wars. It was a 79-year conflict between the UIR, I think it was the... I don't remember exactly what it stood for, and then the COG. So the UIR and the COG were at civil war for 79 years over... What sparked it was the Emulsion, which was the resource, the revolutionary resource that was now running the planet. And my thoughts were, well, maybe they were just using so much of this resource, the lifeblood of the planet, that somehow the Locusts were forced to come up to combat them from killing the planet and everything else. How cool would that have been to find out that playing as the COG, you were the bad guy. You were killing the residents of the planet that were just trying to keep it from dying. No, but instead they reveal that Emulsion is an organism itself and it's making creatures. And it's so stupid. You haven't played Gears 3. It's the best in the series, it really is. And Karen Travis did a great job at sort of tying up the disastrous product that arose from Gears 2. But it's too bad, because they missed a golden opportunity here to also wow their fans and gamers alike. I don't understand how these professional writers, people who are spending a ton of time trying to perfect a story and to convey it to their fans and gamers of all kinds, can just not touch down on this at all. Did nobody think of this at all? It was alluded to in Gears, in the second Gears, that the Locusts were the humans, which I'm so glad that's not the case. Because for some reason, I thought for a little while that's what was going to happen, and that would have been the worst ever. They could have made it into something much greater. And it was all there. The work was already done for them. But that's not the way that they decided to go. Just like in Mass Effect, this indoctrination theory, they could have done so much more with it. They really could have. Look at all these games that constantly get delayed. And I get it, okay? I understand that some places just don't have a choice. Look at a company like Blizzard that can take 10 to 12 years to come out with a game and then disappoint all the other fans. I mean, that's a totally different thing. And I'm pissed off at Diablo 3, but and then they haven't even come out with Heart of the Swarm yet. It's been 2 years. It's an expansion to a game that's already established. 2 years. BioWare couldn't delay another month or so to just tie up the ending right there. Again, you might be pretty pissed off at all of this, but just take a second and think about that ending. If they made it more apparent with all the stuff that you see in the DLC now, but spin it towards the indoctrination theory, how incredible would that have been? How incredible would it have been if in Gears you found out you were the bad guy fighting off the Locust? It could have been such a deeper endeavor. And yeah, there's games out there that you just play because they're action-based. And you know what? That's what the multiplayer is for. But narrative needs to be deep. It needs to touch down on a lot of bases. And it doesn't matter what franchise you're talking about. All that stuff, the people, they have to have a face. If you didn't have an established narrative, then you wouldn't know who Marcus Phoenix was. You wouldn't know who the Master Chief was. You'd just think, oh, it's some Captain Space robot dude and a burly man in Gears fighting off other dudes. That's why all this stuff is here. So don't say that story doesn't matter in this kind of stuff, because it absolutely does. And both these companies really should think about where they're going with their franchises next, because they missed a golden opportunity here. Both of them. And I am excited for the upcoming stuff in both games. Both game franchises, I should say. But just to finish up here, the Epilogue DLC, it's good for what it is. But it just makes me mad that it basically confirms, well, for one thing, the indoctrination theory is not true, and then BioWare just didn't put enough time in the endings. And that's not okay. Ever. For any gaming franchise. Let me know what you guys think about all this, because I know that I'm a little upset. Obviously, you can tell by probably the tone of my voice. I would like to hear what everyone else has to say about it. Just sound off in the comments, and thank you for listening to my rant. Alright, this is Andrew Whipple, the Gamer's Guide to Life, and I am sounding off.